I've been watching your YouTube channel a lot recently, and you've been talking about it for, I think, years, how you think regulation is going to disrupt the real estate wholesaling industry. So what is happening right now for wholesalers?
Well, I mean, first of all, in the last few years, wholesaling has morphed into this multi-billion-dollar industry. But when I got started 20 years ago, it was sort of like this obscure kind of technique that nobody really knew about. And now today, it's just this thriving multi-billion-dollar industry. So it's getting a lot of attention. And with that attention, the bad actors are getting some light. So then now you've got consumer protection and regulatory bodies that are taking notice to wholesaling.
What are some states that you're seeing regulations come?
Yeah, so leading into that, what's happening right now is, and this has been an age-old debate for a long time, but there's a certain thought process that wholesaling is brokering. And if you know what brokering is when you assist somebody in the buying or selling process for a fee. So every state has a real estate commission to govern the process of brokering. And if you're falling into brokering in any way, then the real estate commission by state then has jurisdiction over you. They require a real estate license. They require that you follow specific rules, and you're basically under the umbrella of their oversight. So that's all real estate agents. Every single real estate agent, they have to have an active license. They have to do continuing education. They have to follow a lot of rules to hold an active license because they're getting paid to help somebody buy or sell real estate. They could potentially harm somebody in that process, so they have to follow all the rules, and it's meant to protect the consumer. So the argument now is like, okay, well, wholesaling is brokering. Now, we've always argued as wholesalers that no, it's not, because I'm a holder of a contract. I have an equitable interest in the contract. I'm selling my rights to my contract. I'm not helping somebody buy or sell real estate. That's the argument we make, and it's a valid argument because technically that is what we do when we wholesale, like an assignment of contract is selling that equitable interest, the right to the contract. But that's not how the real estate commission is now seeing it, and they're actually passing laws that are specifically defining wholesaling in some way or another as brokering, which then is putting wholesalers under that same umbrella as agents, which they now have to follow the oversight of the real estate commission. So this is where this whole thing is like, it's very controversial because we argue that no, we're not brokering, but now laws are being passed that are saying, yes, you are brokering, and you better follow the rules or you're going to be subject to penalties and so on, fines and penalties. Now, with this brokering idea, there's two trains of thought. One is that selling your contract is brokering. So any type of marketing and selling of a contract is brokering and needs a real estate license. And that would be Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kentucky, North Dakota, and Iowa are some of those states that are saying, hey, if you market a contract for sale, so that would be saying like on a Facebook group, hey, I've got a contract for sale. Anything that they would consider publicly marketing, they're saying, okay, that act of publicly marketing your contract for sale is the same thing as brokering, and you have to have a license. Well, that's sort of an easy workaround for wholesalers because we can say, okay, well, I'm not publicly marketing it. I've got a cash buyer list that I email or whatever. But then some states are saying, no, the very act of wholesaling, the assignment of contract as a business practice is brokering and requires a license. And that's Illinois, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina are saying any and all type of doesn't matter how you market your contract, just doing it is brokering and needs a real estate license. The other thing, Brian, that we're seeing a lot of right now is the newest trend with these regulations is disclosure. All the recent ones and this year, most of them all have a disclosure requirement, and you have to disclose to the seller that you're a wholesaler and your intent is to sell the contract. And a lot of the penalties are if you don't properly disclose, then the seller can cancel the contract and not close and not have any repercussions. What's really interesting is Pennsylvania, they just pushed through wholesaling in and of itself is brokering, need a license. You have to do disclosure. But even with disclosure, the seller has a full 30 days to cancel the contract for any reason whatsoever. They can just cancel the contract for no reason.
So you don't really have a contract then.
You don't have a contract. Yeah, you don't have a contract. There's not a contract.
Yeah. If they could just do whatever they want, they can cancel, they could sell to someone else, they could do
The cash buyer could go directly to the seller. Another wholesaler could offer $1,000 more. I mean, like, it basically invalidates a legally binding contract. So we're probably looking at early 2025 where that will be law in Pennsylvania. A license, a bunch of disclosure, and the seller can back out for any reason for 30 days.
So does that mean in Pennsylvania, all wholesalers would have to work under a broker? And then
Yes.
depending if the broker has splits, they would also have to pay the broker and then follow any other rules that the brokers have.
You got a bigger problem before that. So the states that require licensing pretty much kills virtual wholesaling because the licensing is in the state where you transact, not where you live. So it doesn't matter if you live in Vegas or California, wherever you're transacting are the laws you have to follow in that state. This is going to sort of disrupt majorly the virtual wholesaler industry, live anywhere and virtually wholesale all over, or in specific markets remote from where they live. We're going to see that disrupted big time with this. But technically, you're right. You would have to get a license in the state where you're transacting. To have an active license, you have to be under a broker. That broker now is responsible for you. They're liable for you. You do something wrong, they're held responsible. You're a big liability as a wholesaler. They may not even want you. If they do take you, they may want splits. So I'm with Real Brokerage. And with Real, they made me sign this agreement that they have no part whatsoever in wholesaling. If I wholesale, I'm on my own. They're not held liable. So as such, I don't have to pay them splits. But they're basically washing their hands of me doing any wholesaling.
My old brokerage here, so people have perspective, I wanted to start getting into investing. I didn't even know about wholesaling. I just want to start flipping. My original broker told me no. He was just like, oh, you can't do it. The point I was trying to make is you're going to have to follow the state law. And then if your broker says you can't wholesale, you can't flip, any other rules that that broker has, you have to follow, or you're going to have to find an investor-friendly broker, which also I feel like those brokers are going to have more control now.
And there's going to be fees of some sort because maybe they want a percentage of your wholesale fees. Maybe they want a monthly fee just to be there. They're going to all require, E&O insurance. So this automatically introduces fees, and you have to stay current on your license. That means you got to take the test, pass the test, get the state, all the things, do the continuing education. So this does add a layer of cost to transacting as a wholesaler. Even if your broker allows you to do it, you're still going to have ongoing fees because every broker is going to want you to pay something if you're under his brokerage.
Yeah. So do you think wholesaling as we know it is going to be over by, let's say, 2026?
Well, the scariest one of all, which I did not mention yet, was South Carolina. So South Carolina just passed a law. There's a lot of controversy around this. There's a lot of people trying to find these little loopholes and stuff. I've interviewed one of the commissioners, Gary Pickren, on my channel where he's talked about it. He's one of the real estate commissioners, and he's explained how the commission is looking at it. I saw he was recently on Bigger Pockets talking about it as well. But South Carolina, what they did was really sort of a backhanded approach to it. First, what they did, Brian, get this. They said, okay, if you're going to wholesale, you have to have a real estate license. Now, that's what everybody's doing, so that's nothing weird there. But you have to understand why the real estate commissions are doing this. By mandating that wholesaling is brokering and you're underneath their umbrella means that they now have oversight over you, and they can say what you can and can't do and how you do it. So they said, okay, this is what wholesaling, we define wholesaling. If you're going to wholesale, you have to have a license. And then they added another clause in their regulation that said, under no conditions are licensed agents allowed to wholesale. And when I first read this, I was like, this makes no sense at all. It's a giant contradiction. First, they're saying you have to have a license. Then they're saying once you have a license, you're not allowed to do it. And that's exactly the intent. The intent was to bring it underneath the real estate commission and then to not allow it to happen. This is an attorney state. South Carolina is an attorney state. So who's liable if something goes wrong? The attorney is going to get pulled into a lawsuit for violating this law. So what you're seeing right now is you're seeing closing attorneys want no part of this at all, like doing traditional wholesaling assignments. There's even debate over whether a double closing is allowed. Novations look like they're out. I mean, it looks like that South Carolina is trying to stop it altogether, not just require licensing, but stop it altogether.
Yeah.
And so if that takes fire, if that trend sort of happens and we start to see that happen state by state, then potentially we could see wholesaling as we know it today be completely different.
That's crazy. And I do want to talk about, like, I know it's scary, but I do want to talk about the strategies that people will be able to use in North Carolina, Illinois, wherever, to make money in real estate. Because there's always going to be a way to make money. But as we know, like in real estate, things change so much that if you're not able to adapt, you will go out of business.
One thing's for certain, Brian, this friction that this is causing is definitely, we're seeing a purging of the industry, so to say, right? So, the people that come in and they're like, oh, I got to get a license, I'm out. Okay, well, if that's all it took for you to get out, then you were never meant to be here in the first place.
Yeah.
So part of this I think is sort of a good thing in a way. Like, I'm not a fan of regulation and government oversight and overreach, which certainly some of this is. I'm not a fan of that at all. But I think it's going to create a massive opportunity, just like the NAR settlement is going to create a massive opportunity for some agents. The rest are all going to quit and leave. But for the ones that learn how to do a sales presentation and learn how to adapt, and they're going to kill it. So I think wholesaling's the same thing. The people that adapt right now and pivot are going to do really well. Like, the smartest thing you could do would be to go into South Carolina right now and set up a wholesale operation. You're going to have to do it differently. But think about it. All the virtual guys are gone, and all the people that have a little bit of friction are gone. All the people that don't want to comply and do things differently, they're all gone. So that means for the real players, massive opportunity.
From other wholesalers that I've heard in the area, they're just doing finder fee agreements. So instead of wholesaling it or assigning it to the end buyer, what they're doing is they'll connect the end buyer with the seller, and then they'll charge or have an agreement with the buyer for the buyer to pay them a finder's fee agreement. Have you heard of it? Any workarounds?
Well,
yet?
that without any regulation violates brokering in and of itself. You cannot do that no matter what, because that compensation you receive from the buyer, that is the definition of brokering. There's no selling my contract. I'm getting paid by the buyer to assist in the transaction. That's brokering. So that never was allowed. And if anybody's doing that, they're violating brokering law, regardless of any of this regulation.
Have you heard of finder's fee agreements?
Oh,
before?
Yeah.
And
a bird dog fee is technically illegal. That's brokering, a bird dog fee.
Really?
Because that's the very definition of brokering. Brokering is when I'm involved in a transaction, helping a seller or a buyer, either one. I'm helping in the transaction, and I get paid compensation. That's brokering. If you were to present that to the real estate commission in any state, they would fine you, and that you would be in trouble for that, for doing that.
Oh, damn. All right.
Yeah.
Well, don't do that then. How would you do it the right way then?
It's just all about what's your role in the transaction and what is that fee you're getting? Is that brokering? That's the question you have to ask yourself. You can do anything until you get caught, right? So if you're unsure, reach out to your local real estate commission and say, hey, is this something that I'm allowed to do? I'll tell you something that happened to me in Idaho. So in Idaho, I had somebody that was working as a bird dog for me. This was an on-market deal. So we were working with an agent. We made an offer, and the offer was rejected. So it wasn't even a successful transaction. The bird dog that was working with the agent said to the agent, hey, if this deal goes through, Jerry Norton is going to pay me a finder fee. Well, the deal didn't go through. The agent was disgruntled for whatever reason. They contacted the real estate commission, and the real estate commission gave me a $4,000 fine for attempting to broker a deal. And they said the very act of offering compensation to somebody, even though the transaction didn't go through and I never actually paid the bird dog fee, the very act of offering and attempting to do it violated the law, and I had to pay a $4,000 fine to the state of Idaho.
But isn't there a lot of people doing like courses and stuff like that where you're teaching people how to bird dog?
Well, if you do it in the traditional sense where you're not a principal in the contract and selling your rights to the contract, outside of that, that would be brokering, and you would be in violation of the law.
So I guess teach us, how's the correct way? I want to do deals. How do I do that? I
mean, one loophole that I do quite a bit with bank properties, so this would be REOs and short sales. All REOs and short sales have a no assignment clause. So you have to double close those. You cannot do an assignment, and they won't let you add it in. They won't let you exclude that part of the contract. I've tried it and they won't, right? And I've done what I'm about to share. I've done hundreds, maybe thousands of times, because back in when the '08 crash happened, everything was an REO and I was wholesaling like crazy. So what you do is you set up a new LLC, and the LLC contracts the property. So this isn't your operating LLC that you do business out of. This is an independent LLC, single member LLC. You set that up. That LLC contracts the property, and then rather than assign the contract, you sell the membership rights of the LLC to your cash buyer. So then the cash buyer steps in as the new member of the LLC of contract. So the buyer of contract never changed. The owner of the LLC changed. And now what you're doing is and the thing about this is it's not on the HUD. It's not on the settlement statement, because this is a business transaction, not a real estate transaction. I sold my LLC to the buyer, not the contract or the property. And then they step in, they're the new buyer, they sign at closing, single closing, and the fee they pay you is a fee to buy an LLC. It's a business selling of a business fee, not an assignment fee or a double close, right? So I do that all the time. I have an active deal right now that's a short sale, and that's how I'm waiting for approval, but that's how we're doing that deal. Now, is that a loophole with some of these regulations and stuff? Possibly. But again, all of this comes down to how the real estate commission is going to define what you're doing. So this is what South Carolina told me. And this shed a lot of light on a lot of these laws and regulations. And this shuts down everybody's argument too. I hear this argument all the time, like, oh, just double close, no big deal. Just double close, no big deal. Maybe, but I mean, guys, like, what is going on though? What's the underlying tone? What's the purpose of the regulation? What are they trying to stop? They're trying to stop wholesaling and they define this by making money on something you don't yet own. So that's a double close, that's an assignment, that's a novation. You don't own the property and you're trying to make money in a transaction. That's what they're trying to stop. That's what they don't like, because the seller doesn't know what's going on. A buyer doesn't know if you can convey title. Like, that's the issue. Once you buy it and own it and take title and it's in your name, you can do whatever you want. And that's not the issue. The issue is, are you trying to make money on a property you don't own? Like, if we really look at what they're trying to stop, that's what they're trying to stop. So maybe you can get away with a double close in Virginia without a license and stuff like that. Like, maybe you can, but you know, if that's put in front of the REC, they might look at that and say, yeah, that's not what that's not what we intended to do, was stop the assignment, but not the double close. We don't want you doing this without a license and without oversight. Like, that's the big picture of what they're trying to do.
And like, how many real estate transactions do you think you've closed over your career?
I mean, 20 years actively. I mean, right now I'm in wholesale. I'm actively in 6 markets, and we transact, multiple deals every single month, 6 figures. Some of those markets, 6 figures routinely monthly. So, a lot. And that's just my wholesale operation, not counting flipping and other things, right? So, I mean, I'm very active at wholesaling today in the market. And I do some virtual on my own outside of core markets that I actively market in and transact in. So, like, I'm very concerned about this. I mean, people are like, Jerry, you're fear mongering. No, I'm not. I'm just telling everybody like what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, I get so much heat for talking about this. What's happening here, Brian, is the education industry, which I'm very much a part of. The education industry wants to gloss this over and not talk about it, because we thrive on beginners coming into the business. And if we tell a beginner, hey, there's some friction here, then maybe they're going to go do something else that's easier. So we tend to like, oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, just double close. Oh, Jerry's hyping this up. It's not that big a deal. You can still do it. It says right here this or something. And what everyone's doing is they're ignoring the fact that the language in the marketplace, these regulators, what they're saying wholesaling is predatory. It's harmful to sellers. We do not like it. We do not want it. We want to stop it. That's the narrative on the streets.
If you were starting over today and you lived in Pennsylvania, would you still try to become a wholesaler?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So first of all, anywhere you still can do the assignment, great. I mean, it's awesome because it's low risk. It doesn't need any money to do it. Like, I'm still doing assignments everywhere I can. I'm just not disillusioned to what's happening, and I'm not a one-trick pony. The assignment of contract is one method to make money transacting real estate. And people need to understand that if you get into this business and you're a one-trick pony, you're in trouble right out of the gate. You're in trouble because that's not the best strategy every time. And you need to learn how to transact multiple ways. Just like I'll fix and flip, just like I'll do luxury, I'll do Novation. I'll do multiple strategies that are still under the umbrella of flipping. Because to me, I'm a transactioneer, right? Like I like to do deals where I get in, I get out, I make as much as I can. Sometimes that's an assignment because it's fast, it's easy. I'll take a quick 15,000 or 20,000 and be done. Sometimes I stay in the deal and I see it through to the end and I do the repairs and I try to make the $100,000 and get all the meat on the bone. What I'm teaching people is come into this business with both feet in the business. Come in with your all your heart and soul, right? This is not a fly-by-night, get-rich-quick thing. It used to be maybe, or we used to sell it that way, or people sell it. People still try to sell it that way. If you're thinking this is a get-rich-quick and you're not going to have to work your ass off, go do something else because this is work. This is effort. More and more, it's going to require capital, which means you got to learn how to raise money to do deals. Like where wholesaling's going, where wholesaling's going is you're going to need money. You're going to have to go get the money and buy the freaking house. Like you're going to have to do that. That's the future of wholesaling. You got to buy it. You got to take some risk. It blows my mind that people are like, no, let's not touch it. Let's pretend like, no risk wholesaling is going to be here forever. It's not going to be here forever. It's going away quickly. To me, what I find fascinating is if I talk to off camera, off the education platform, if I talk to active wholesalers that have been in the business for a little while, they run a full operation, most of them are doing a lot of non-assignment transactions, meaning they're double closing, they're taking them down and reselling them on the MLS. They're doing some flips, maybe not more flips than wholesales, but I'm just saying the assignment method is the lowest paying method in the entire ecosystem of flipping. It's the lowest paying method because you have to pass that on to the next guy and leave enough meat on the bone for them to do their thing and make money, right? Whereas if you take it down and then you resell it on the MLS, you skip the investor and go right to the retail buyer, or you fix it up and go right to the retail buyer. Like those value add techniques make a lot more money if you do them right. So what we're finding here is most wholesalers, whether they'll tell you it or not, are transitioning or have been for a while away from the assignment anyway. The reason why we talk about the assignment so much, why you hear about it on YouTube, why you hear about it on all these coaching programs, is because it's the lowest barrier to entry, it's the lowest risk, it's the easiest way to get started. Because the education attracts the newbie, for the most part, it's the newbie. That's what we talk about because that's the easiest way to help somebody get started. It's not the only way and it's not necessarily the best way. And I think what we've got to do in the education platform is we've got to just start getting more real with people that you're going to have to take some risk. You're going to have to put your name on something. You're going to have to take title to something. You're going to have to raise some money. It doesn't mean it has to be your money, but you're going to have to take some level of risk to do this business well, rather than just like, I want to have no risk, no money. I want free methods. Ryan!
What up? I was like,
hey,
what's going on in here? People are getting yelled at.
Oh, Jerry Norton's yelling at me right now because he's.
I might be raising my voice. I get a little hyped up.
I can hear it all the way from the conference room.
So, all right, we got disconnected, but we got a special guest, Ryan Pineda. So you jumped in mid-podcast, but Jerry was going through just all the regulations that are happening in Pennsylvania. They just passed a new law where almost banning wholesaling. Yeah, can you give him the details?
It's not that they banned wholesaling. What they did is they require a license now to wholesale, and you got to provide a bunch of disclosure. That's normal. Like that's what a lot of states are doing. What they did that was kind of unique was they said a seller or a buyer can cancel a contract for any reason without cause whatsoever for 30 days or until closing, whichever happens first. So basically your contract is useless and pointless. It serves no purpose whatsoever.
This is all of real estate in Pennsylvania, or
no wholesaling?
How would they know you're wholesaling versus a normal contract?
Because they define it as wholesaling. So they say if your intent is to sell your equitable interest for a fee, wholesaling.
What if your intent's just to double close?
Well, that's a gray area. So that's kind of the question on the street is, well, what if I'm double closing? And it's not super clear because there's some language that's vague. Like it says assign, sell, transfer. And then it also says in the definition of wholesaling prior to taking legal title to the property. So if you think about it, double closing violates taking legal title to the property. It could or it couldn't, because you're contracting your BC contract before you have legal title, but you're closing it after you just bought it. So then you do have legal title. So that's a gray area. Double close is I think we can, and we're going to try it. It all depends on how the real estate commission in Pennsylvania will define a double closing.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, here's the funny thing, Ryan, is like, okay, well, it says intent. Well, what if you say, oh, well, I changed my mind at the last minute. I didn't intend to wholesale it, but then I did. Well, the way they define intent is a couple things. Do you have the means to buy it? So do you have the capital or access to capital? That's one way. The other way is, what's your history of behavior? So if you're a wholesaler and you're actively wholesaling 5 deals a month, and then you say, oh, well, my intent wasn't to wholesale. Well, yeah, it is. That's what you do.
Yeah. You're a serial wholesaler. Jerry, how do you keep up with all this crap?
Right now, there's a couple bills that are in process that I'm watching closely.
What are some scary ones coming up?
Oregon passed one. That's law now. If you go up to the Oregon one, that one's really freaky. They require that you have to register as a wholesaler. You have to pass a background test. You can't have a criminal record. They do fingerprints. Like, it's freaking like the Gestapo over there in Oregon.
One of my sales guys is toast. He's not going to be able to do it.
Yeah. How many wholesalers have a criminal record? Like all of them, you know?
Exactly.
That's funny.
But yeah, so Oregon, they got all this disclosure. You got to have a license. So a lot of the states, like if you look at Iowa said, got to have a license, you got to do disclosure. And if you don't, then there's a window of time where the seller can cancel the contract. That's why Pennsylvania was freaky, because they said, it doesn't matter if you follow the rules. It doesn't matter if you have a license. It doesn't matter if you disclose properly. We're giving the seller the right to cancel for any reason at all. Like what? How is that even a thing? How can you violate contract law?
And then which was the one, I forgot, the one that they defined what wholesaling is and then just said that you cannot wholesale?
Oh, that's South Carolina. So that's the scary one. So what South Carolina did is they said, okay, here's what wholesaling is. If you're going to wholesale, you have to have a license. Now, what that does is it brings it under the jurisdiction of the Real Estate Commission, because the Real Estate Commission is an oversight for brokering, which is agents and property managers and now wholesalers. And then they say, now that you've got your license, you are not allowed to wholesale whatsoever, engage in it, help with it, participate in it at all. So they basically said, we do not want wholesaling to happen at all in South Carolina.
We did like a 40K novation in South Carolina a couple months ago.
Not anymore, because here's the problem now. South Carolina is an attorney state, so real estate attorneys close the transactions. Good luck trying to find an attorney in South Carolina that will close a novation or an assignment. Now, maybe they'll do a double closing, but I don't even think they'll do those. They're freaked out because they're attorneys. They're not going to do something that might give them liability.
We've had wholesalers in here from South Carolina.
Well, this is brand new. This is brand new. This is July. Like, this is right now. This happened.
Oh, this just passed in July.
Yeah, this has happened in the past month with South Carolina.
Got it. Okay.
So what's the workaround?
What I'm doing a lot of is, I call it the takedown method, but it's just wholetailing, where you just buy the thing. Just buy it. Don't recontract with a buyer. Buy it, take it down, trash it out, clean it, and put it back on the MLS and just resell it. You're not really fix and flipping. It's not wholesaling anymore. That's what I'm doing a lot of. That's I think the future of wholesaling is to just buy it and resell it.
You mean flip houses?
Flip houses. Yeah.
What you do is you flip the house.
You know, in the old days, we called this buy real estate and sell real estate. That's what we used to call it. Buy real estate and sell real estate.
Yeah.
We were going to talk about it, but what are your thoughts on what's going to happen with like novations?
I think novations also have a shelf life, because they fall into that bucket of making money before you own the property. And that's really where the end game is. So the end game of wholesaling, these regulators, what they want to stop, they're doing it sort of wrong because they just don't know what they're doing and they don't understand wholesaling well enough. So they write these laws, and the way they write these laws, it's very poorly written. So then we're all like excited because, oh, there's a loophole here, right? Like they didn't say novations. Yeah. But what they're trying to stop, and this is what I was telling you earlier, Brian, what they're trying to stop is transacting where you don't yet own the property. So that would be an assignment. That would be a double close, because a double close, you contract before you own the property. So if you're not allowed to transact before you own it, you're not allowed to contract something you don't yet own. That's a double closing. and that would be novations because you don't actually own the property that you're selling on a novation. So any of those strategies where you don't actually own the property before you remarket it or resell it is where they're after. That's what they're after.
Got it.
So will it take time? You know, how soon and who and when? And time will tell. I will say this. This regulation on wholesaling is aggressive. Just this year, there's been, I think, 6 or 7 of the states on that list that I gave you, that wholesale regulation. All are this year. And so it's snowballing. You're starting to see a domino effect happen with this.
Got it. And then do you share this list?
It's a download. If you go to wholesaleregulations.com, you can download that list. I try to update it. Every time something comes out, I update it. And you can see on there, like Connecticut's got a bill right now that's in play. Maryland had a really aggressive one that died, but they're saying that they're going to reintroduce it. Texas is exploring regulation right now with wholesaling. I mean, everybody is. So what was interesting is this South Carolina commissioner that I did a YouTube video with, Gary Pickering. He said that the commissioners across all the states, they mastermind like we investors do. And they go to these conventions and they get together and they talk about, well, what are you doing in your state and what's going on? What are you seeing? And he said at these conventions, the number one topic that they all talk about every time is wholesaling. And the conversation is, what do we do about these freaking wholesalers? How do we stop them? Not me saying this is him saying that. So they're very concerned about it. The old grandma getting kicked out of her house by a wholesaler and all the horror stories, which, by the way, most of that's just not true at all. You know, it's the 1% that ruin it for everybody else.
I just had this vision of them like sitting around masterminding, like this Jerry Norton and this Ryan Pineda teaching people how to wholesale. And, you know, kicking grannies out.
Yeah, kicking old ladies out to the curb. You know, like that's what they talk about. Like in Pennsylvania, the 2 senators that introduced that bill and pushed that bill through, on their website, they talked about this wholesalers. They prey on the vulnerable. They trick sellers into selling their house far below market value. Like this is the language they're using about why they're putting this regulation in place. All of it's derogatory, all of it's negative, all of it's predatory. Wholesalers are these bad people out there screwing over sellers, when the reality is no one else is going to serve those sellers but wholesalers. Like agents can't help them. Nobody can help them, right? Because they're in distress. They got to close quick. You know, it's a problem. They don't want anybody coming in their home. Like there's only one person that's going to help them, and that's wholesalers. It's really sad to see this like derogatory approach to it. But, you know, if you look at it, it's all led by NAR. So the National Association of Realtors, they're behind all of this. They push it really hard. In Pennsylvania, they set up a wholesaler task force. And then they had
NAR's got way bigger problems than
I know,
than wholesalers.
But they feel like wholesalers are taking their business. When that bill was to vote in the House, the National Association of Realtors got 250 agents to go to the Capitol building to support passing this bill against wholesalers in Pennsylvania. Like they're very, very involved in stopping wholesalers. It's all National Association of Realtors behind it. They do not want wholesalers.
Don't they have like a $2 billion thing they got to go fight right now? Like, what are they doing? Over their own manipulation of commissions.
Everybody in this business is going to also have to learn how to raise capital. Like you got to be able to fund deals. And if you're intimidated by that or you don't learn that skill, you will always be limited. And now with regulation, more and more so, because it's just going to get harder and harder to do the true like no money techniques are going to be a relic. They're going to be a thing of the past. At some point in the future, you're going to have to buy the freaking thing and then sell it. And I talk about all these regulations on my channel. I get a lot of hate for it, but it's the reality of what's happening, and I'm trying to help people see what happens and how to pivot.
All right. Thank you, Jerry Norton. Appreciate you coming on, brother.
Good seeing you, bro.
Yeah. Good seeing you, Ryan. Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
All right. See ya.